Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Northwest Craftsman. Today we're going to be going through and setting up a jointer that I recently purchased, and this is going to get it up in working condition so that I have it ready for my shop. Some of these steps are going to be universally applicable regardless of what jointer you have, so even if you don't have the same jointer that I do, go ahead and stick around because it should still be informative. Alright, let's get going. Alrighty guys, here she is. I am so excited to have this guy in my shop. I've been looking for an 8-inch jointer for a while and I think this is going to be perfect. But before we get working with it, there's a couple of things that I want to check. First is going to be the coplanarity between both of the infeed and outfeed, so infeed and outfeed faces. Next is going to be checking to make sure that our fence is perpendicular to each one of these so that I can actually get that nicely jointed face. Then I'm going to check the blade condition. I also need to get something set up with mobility because I'm tight on space all the way through on this wall. And then I also need to figure out a power situation because the cord that came with it is only like 2 feet long, and so I'm not going to be able to move this guy out from the wall at all if I can only plug it in there. So that's just a couple of the things that we're going to check today. Let's go ahead and get started. Also, I thought it went without saying, but I think I'll just be explicit about this. Before you start, make sure that it is unplugged from the wall so that there's no possible way that your blade is going to start spinning while we're doing all of these checks. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make sure that both of the infeed and outfeed bed plates are coplanar with each other. And what I need to do first is make sure that my fence is all the way back so that we can check as much of the surface as possible. Now you could technically take the fence off entirely, but given that this should have already been set up, I'm going to check it on the different spots that are available while the fence is still there. If I find that anything is out, then we'll go ahead and remove it so that we can get all the adjustments done. But let's start with checking. Alrighty, to make sure that these two are coplanar with each other, the first thing that I want to do is make sure that the outfeed table is coplanar to the spindle itself. Now, you want to make sure that when this is rotating around that there is not a blade showing at the top because the blades should be coplanar, but we'll do that adjustment later. We want to make sure that the spindle, as you see it right here, is actually what you're coplanar to. So I'm going to grab a straight edge. I'm going to use both a carpenter square and I'm going to use my level because I don't have a true genuine straight edge, and both of those should be close enough for me to see whether or not I am sitting level on this and I'm even with the top here. Alrighty, so to give you guys a quick glimpse of what I am seeing here, I want to swing this guy, swing that up and out of the way. Now, what I'm seeing is a very hair-thin paper thin gap all the way across, and I'm making sure that this side of the level is sitting flat on the outfeed table. And then underneath, you can see that there's just barely a hair of a gap there. But when I go all the way to the back side, it is the exact same paper-thin gap. Now, I could take shims to this to understand if I've got exactly the same gap, but just by my eyeball, that is pretty darn close on both of them. Now, the one piece of this that may be slightly out of tune is when you then rotate this so that you get the blade sitting top dead center. What should happen on your outfeed table is that where your blade cuts, you finish out here at the exact same height. So the top highest part of your blade should be dead level with this, but what I am seeing is that when I rotate the blade through, you see how it picks up and moves my level just a little bit? That gap right there is just barely out of tune. Now, I don't know if that's the blades or if that's the outfeed table, but for now, I'm going to leave that in because that is a very, very, very small difference, and we're going to see how that functionally impacts my lumber. But technically speaking, this is not correct. I'll come back to this later if it's an issue, but by and large, I was trying to make sure that the outfeed table, this guy right here, is at least coplanar with the axis of the spindle, and in this case, it is. Alrighty, I'm actually just going to adjust that outfeed table while we're here. Okay, so because we know the outfeed table is already dead level with a cutter head here, all I need to do is do a small adjustment on the outfeed table to bring it up so that it becomes level with the cutter head while it's at top dead center. So what I'm going to do is rotate this cutter head until it is top dead center. Should be right around there. Check it with the planer, with the flat edge or straight edge here in a second. And then all I'm going to do is loosen up the lock here, and then I'm going to use the lever to bring that up until they're just about dead even. Okay, here we go. Alright, if you guys couldn't see that well, basically I took the fence off because I thought it was interfering with the outfeed table. Turns out it was just sticky on the dovetail. Okay, so when I was adjusting this, one of the things that you'll now see after the adjustment is that when I move it back and forth, it just barely graces it, barely touches it at all. And that's exactly what we want to see both on the front and on the back. That says that our outfeed table is now even with the top of the blades where we're going to be coming through, which means that as soon as our workpiece gets cut, it's going to rest evenly on the outfeed table, which is exactly the support the workpiece needs. Now we're going to take the outfeed table and make sure that it's coplanar with the infeed table. And the first step of doing that is rotate past top dead center so that your blade is out of the way, and then there should be a solid gap underneath this so that we're not going to be interfering with this blade at all. And then what we're going to do is we want to bring this up until it meets here. We're basically going to check to see all the way along the length with this evenly split on both sides, making sure that it's touching all over here and all over here. Now, I am going to be limited to how long of a workpiece I have. So I think I've got a 24-inch level, and I've got this guy, which is also like 23, 24 inches. So I'm limited to 2 feet, so it's not going to be perfect. If you've got a longer straight edge, use the longest straight edge you have when you're trying to check the coplanarity here, because it is possible that at the far end of my jointer, all the way down here, that it's not actually going to be coplanar, or it's going to be slightly off. But I am banking on the fact that I should see it on this side if anything is wonky coming through. Okay, so good news. When I was moving this from Central Oregon over to here, there is no gap all the way along the edge as far as I can see. Now, I know that I don't have it evenly split on the left-hand side, but that's because I can hold it down level. I wanted to pull it over this direction. I get exactly the same result. It is just flat as can be all the way across. Man, that's good. That makes me excited. So if you have a jointer that does need to be adjusted, a lot of times there are eccentric bearings inside of these dovetails, and what you end up doing is you rotate them so that it shifts the table and how it's sitting. Now, I don't have to do that for this one, so I'm not going to show that. There are plenty of other good videos online to show how to adjust your coplanarity, but because I don't have to, I'm not going to mess up my coplanarity just in order to execute that. But this is the check you're going to do to make sure that they are coplanar. This is the point of a jointer, so you want to make sure that this is right. Now, the next thing that we want to check is the fence to make sure that it is at 90 degrees, both to the infeed and to the outfeed table. That is the second most important point of a jointer, to make sure that we get not only a flat, but a perpendicular face before we move it over to the planer. Let's go ahead and check that. Okay, so when I'm doing this, there's going to be 2 different methods that I use. One is going to be a digital angle finder, and then the next one is going to be my machinist square. I want to see how close in agreement they are, because normally I just use my digital angle finder to see if it's accurate, but I also want to see if there's a gap here, because again, that is the second most important thing that a jointer does, is make sure that you've got one square face. Alrighty, so both methods appear to be in agreement. You'll notice on the digital angle finder, so I've got 0 degrees on the bed. I'm going to bring it up here. I've got 89.9, 89.8, kind of depends on where it's sitting, 89.9. When I move over to my machinist square, notice there's no light coming through that, and that's exactly what you're looking for. So this guy looks like it's dead square, or square enough for any of the work that I'm going to be doing. And it also tells me that the resolution on this guy at 0.9 is probably not enough, because this guy is looking like he's there. Now, there is always a chance that my machinist square is not actually square, though this is what I'm squaring up most of my projects with. It's actually kind of a challenge, so perhaps I need to get a better square, but at least at this point, this looks square. Well, okie dokie then, that's actually pretty exciting. So with the beds being coplanar with each other, the outfeed table to the correct height, infeed table ready to be adjusted but coplanar to the outfeed, and then everything at 90 degrees to the fence, I'm golden with regards to all of that. Next up, what I want to do is touch up this cast iron surface, scrub away a couple of these marks right here. You can see that somebody decided to put their wet cup here and left some nice cup rings. So I'm going to see if I can't get those guys buffed out, and then cover the entire thing with paste wax so that it is protected and slick, ready for a workpiece. Okay, so with that taken care of, everything on the tabletop should be good to go now, and what I want to do is figure out my dust collection, my power, and then also the mobility. But here's the problem. None of that gets figured out just right here because I need some extra parts. Let me see what Amazon can get me. Oh, look at that. They got same-day delivery for all of this. Wow. Same-day delivery got really fast. Alrighty, well, let's tear this open and start working with it. Aha, perfect. Dust collection, so this is basically going to mount directly to that dust collection port. And then I also got some universal base wheels. Basically, you put a piece of 3-inch or 3/4 inch plywood on the inside of these, and then you just build it to exactly the size you need, and these go on the corners. So we're going to try and use this. Also, to solve my power issue, little baby extension cord. Now, make sure if you're putting an extension cord on any of your tools to read the instructions carefully, because they give very specific requirements in my jointer as to what the extension cord needs to be in order to be compatible with it under the loads it's going to be running at. So just make sure to check the specifications on that. By and large, if you can avoid an extension cord, avoid the extension cord. Just use the default one that's built in, but in my case, it's literally like this long, so it can't even reach the socket. So we're gonna use this. Okay, for this one, I'm just using self-tapping sheet metal screws, and I'm basically just gonna tap it straight through here. Basically, if you look at the back side, it has a very narrow opening, and then it's got a directionality so that this guy sits at the bottom, so that as everything comes down through here, basically funnels in at the bottom and can get sucked out. Alrighty, next let's get this mobile base done. Got to see how it wants me to put these together, whether it's oversized a little bit or just cut directly to size. But I usually find it's better to follow the directions included. The manufacturer has usually thought all of those things through. Not always, but usually. that worked a lot better than I expected to. Basically, I can just kick these two guys right here and then pull it in and out. I was kind of worried I was going to have to rotate it as I was trying to go through because both of the wheels would be over here. But I was able to configure this nicely so that it just rotated in and out. Now, one of the things that I will say is if you don't have to put it on a mobile base, don't, because I can tell it's a little bit less stable than it would be otherwise, but pretty good. I also, on my particular jointer, there are mounting spots on either side, and so I actually screwed it or bolted it straight down to the plywood, so it's a lot more stable than it was without those. Alright, and then the last step, or second to last step, is I want to figure out the power, which should be just as easy as putting the extension cord on there, but then I also want to check the condition of the blades because I may need to get a replacement for those. And actually, I'm going to start with the blades because I don't want to plug it in before I'm checking the blades. Alrighty, so flipping these guys around real fast. Ooh, boy, that's a doozy. I don't know how well you can see this. Let me try and zoom in for you. You got that guy there, more nicks down here. What do the other blades look like? Yeah, this blade has definitely been well used, or all, wow, that's a big chunk out right there. These guys have definitely been well used. I mean, they will certainly be functional for at least the initial use, but I should put one of those or a set of those on my shopping cart so that I can get a new set of those, or just upgrade this straight to a helical set from Helix. But I think I will wait on that since those are also running about $400, which is almost what I bought this guy for. So I'm probably going to use just a set of high speeds, which I think we're running about 50 bucks. But go ahead and always check your condition of those because that can make a big difference on how easy it is to cut hardwoods or just other woods in general, and how efficient it is. All right, and then actually, last but not least, let's go ahead and roll this guy out. Oh, look at that one-handed operation. Then go ahead and look at my ultra short extension cord, or ultra short power cord back here. Get this guy hooked up. Okay, and with that all done, the startup procedure that I always use when getting a brand new tool in the shop or after doing a lot of work is to press the start button and immediately press the stop button just to make sure that everything's working, because if anything is going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong as soon as you hit the power button. So let's go ahead and give this a quick boot up and shut down. Well, that's at least a good first initial sign. Everything's running. Let's try it more. Okay, let's get some wood through this. Well, I should probably get those blades sooner rather than later. You could hear it as it was struggling to get through these two knots here. So let's get a slightly easier piece of wood for it. I mean, get ready to replace those blades. Otherwise, sounds good. Well, cut back to tried another piece of wood, and yeah, it still was just slapping it around. You can see it just slapping all over the place here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some new blades for this and see you guys in a second. There we go. If you guys are interested where I got the knives for my jointer, I will put a link down in the description. I'll do a video later on how to replace these blades, but right now I'm just going to zoom right through it and get them replaced for you. Here's a quick comparison if you want to see what new knives and old knives look like. This is one of my old knives. You can see all of the dings and scratches along the edge right there. This guy really went through the ringer. And all of them were like that. All three of the blades were like that. And then this is what, I'm trying to be careful not to cut my fingers. This is what the new one looks like. Just pristine. It's this, hold on a second. That guy right there. Look at how beautiful that looks. Now, I will say after doing the adjustment on here, it is moderately difficult to get everything aligned. And so if you have one of these, it's probably worth getting a jig. If you have a good way of setting these up, I would love to hear from you in the comment section down below, because I spent far too long trying to get all of these aligned and set to the right height. All right, with the new heads in there, let's go ahead and give it one test and see how much better it works now that we might actually have sharp blades. Or I can guarantee you they're sharp because I almost cut my finger open multiple times. So with sharp blades, let's see how well it works. Wow, it's amazing how nice having sharp blades in there. Would highly recommend that if you feel like you're struggling to get things across, definitely get some new blades. That cut through this pine like it was butter. Like there was no problem there. You can see how hard it had a time cutting with the old blades on this side. This is just smooth as can be, sharp on the corners, and I didn't have any of the same issues that I had previously. So overall, I'm super excited. You can see from this as well, we are square and flat all the way across, which is exactly what the jointer is supposed to do. Well guys, I hope you learned something about setting up your jointer. I am super thrilled to have this thing up and operational and ready to go. If you have a jointer in your shop and either you just need to do a little bit of a tune-up or you're not really sure where it sits, run through these steps and it should be able to get you going. I'm just thrilled. That last piece of wood going over the top of it with the fresh blades, with the wax table, with everything set up nice and square, gave me exactly the results that I was expecting. So I'm thrilled. I'm excited to have this guy in the shop and have this capability online now. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. Really appreciate you guys watching the entire video. And if you like the kind of content we're producing here at Northwest Craftsman, would really appreciate getting a thumbs up on the video and subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell notification icon so that you guys can know when we've got new content coming out. Thanks again, guys. Happy woodworking. Go make some sawdust. Bye.